We talked a little bit about you want to have a representative sample when you use a sample to make conclusions about your population. And here is more information about what that means. And I tell you, and I'm teaching you these things because I hope that you will be able to read studies that other people have done and see whether or not they've followed some of these principles of good statistics. And if they haven't, and you can recognize that from reading the study, then you know whether or not you should pay attention to the results of the study. Sometimes they're just for entertainment, and we need to know, is it just for my entertainment that I know what percent of the people surveyed like coffee, or is that a statistical fact or statistical statement that's been shown to be sound? And to do, one of the main things we need to know is whether the sample was representative. So when we choose a sample, we want a representative sample. When we choose a sample, we want a representative sample, and a representative sample means every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected to be in the sample. And that sounds pretty easy, but if you think about a sample where I only talk to students at Eastern, but then I'm trying to make conclusions about students across the country, not representative, because I might have done a great job at ENMU choosing my sample, but I didn't have representation or even the possibility of representation from all the other students across the United States. So if my population is all students in the United States, I should have, every student in the United States should have an equal chance of being selected for my sample. One way to ensure that you have a random, oh my gosh. One way to ensure that you have a representative sample is to take a random sample. And a random sample you can identify a random sample because it has no human interference. Some examples, some ways that you can choose a random sample are drawing a name from a hat. You can use a computer to jumble up the numbers of how many people you have in your population and then take the first 10 people or 20 or 30 for your sample. And you can use lotto balls. We've probably all seen that on TV when they draw the lotto balls. They have the big tumbler that spins around and then pops a ball out. There's no human deciding which ball gets pulled out. That makes it completely random. Drawing a name from a hat is good. You shuffle up the numbers and then pull one out. You don't peek, of course, because that would make it not random. And then you try to make sure that you always are shuffling before you grab. And then using the computer jumbled list of names or just numbers is what we usually do. That's another good way to make a random list. So some examples of choosing a non-random sample. So if a person decides who's going to be in a sample and just looks at maybe a list of names or however they decide, you can't consider that to be random because there are so many things that people have going on in their minds when they're choosing a person that it can influence who you choose. So we do not think in statistics that a person choosing who gets to be sampled is random. And so if you think about your Chapter 2 projects, we all did, and we'll talk about it a little bit here, but we all did a type of sampling that was not random, because you chose all the people that you knew or people you worked with or people that you have on Facebook or something like that to be in your sample, and that made it non-random. So if we're trying to make conclusions about the population in general, our sample has to be representative, and to make sure it's representative, it should be a random sample. So non-random, a person decides, and another way for a non-random sample is taking the first 25 people who walk through the door at the mall, for example. That's not random because first off, they have to be going to the mall, and not everybody who is in your population goes to the mall probably, and so you have to be careful about taking the first 25, because then again, they're all early birds or on time people or whatever, but they're a specific kind of person, and not everyone has an equal chance if you do it that way. And while we're on the mall is the worst place to take samples, and Facebook is going to be a close second, because the only ones who are given the opportunity to be in your study are the ones who happen to go to the mall or happen to be on Facebook or happen to be your friend, and that's not very random. And sometimes even a phone survey can be considered to not be random, because there are a lot of people who have phones that are not listed, so you don't even have the opportunity to call those phone numbers. And also, some people don't even have a phone, so they're completely excluded from consideration. Anything like that, you have to be really careful, because they might not be in the consideration.